What's up, people at home? So you were supposed to do this sheet right here, figure out the chi-square value. If the chi-square value over here is less than the critical value, then your data is statistically close to what you expected. Okay, for everybody in here and everybody at home. So on this one, you put what you observed. On this one, you calculated what the observed would be using your data. The averages for that are over there. Y'all can see it on the far right side, 51.9%. That's that row. Okay. Sorry. There's people in the room, but I'm pretending they're not here. All right. Now, you do your O minus E squared, and you figure out your chi-square value. If your chi-square value is less than your critical value, what does that mean about your data? Do you accept or reject your data? If your chi-square value is less than your critical value, you accept your data because your data should be statistically close to what you expected to get. If your chi-square value is greater than your critical value, then you reject your data, you reject your null hypothesis, and your data is not statistically close to what you expected. And for some reason, either in your observations, the way you conducted your experiment, the things that you looked at, probably did something wrong, and we need to go back and figure out what that was. You will not be counted off if your chi-square value is greater than your critical value and you had to reject your null hypothesis. Okay? That's okay. I just want to know that you know how to analyze and look at the data more than anything. Okay? So, in the notes today, I'll give y'all time to finish that up toward the end of class here. This shouldn't take too long. We're just trying to get through the first part of cell communication, part 1 notes. Monday we'll hit these notes hard and try to get through at least through part 2 if possible. And then I've got a test scheduled for next Thursday. Hopefully we will finish notes on Tuesday, Wednesday will be a review day, and then Thursday will be a test on cell cycle and communication. Now, keep this in mind. Cell cycle and communication, especially the cell communication, will continue through the rest of this 9 weeks. It will just continue in the form of how do cells function and communicate in nervous cells, immune cells, hormone cells, or endocrine cells, and reproductive cells. So we're going to be looking at the functionality of all those things, and they will all tie back into cell communication. Yes, ma'am? I'm going to push that back a little bit. Remind me on Monday to go over that, but I'll probably give you to like the end of the week to get that done. So yeah, there is a short assignment I've given right here. You see it, cancer. What does that say? Characteristics, location, genetics, environment or causes, prevalence, death rate, age, and treatments available. So I'm asking that you pick some type of cancer and that you use those, that you address those topics. And it should be pretty short and sweet. You can do it on an index card. It doesn't have to be full sentences. And I would like for you to pick a cancer that someone near you or that you know of, either in the family or close to your family, that's maybe had that type of cancer, so that you have a little better understanding of what it is and what causes it and what you're up against. Okay? All right, cell communication. Communication. What are the 2 ways that cells can communicate with one another? Okay, they can touch one another. What's the other one? Sending out proteins. Yeah, we're just going to say chemical signals. So I don't know about proteins. Some of those are proteins. It depends on what kind of signal is sent out, but through chemical means, through signals, and through touch. Okay? Those are the 2 ways that cells communicate. They don't have eyes, they don't have ears, so they either have to touch one another and exchange something, or they have to send out a signal to another cell. Now, there are 2 major control systems in your body. What are they, Matthew? What are the 2 major control systems in your body? Okay, your nervous system is the primary one. What's the secondary system that controls your body? Nervous controls primary control? What's the secondary control for your body cells? Hmm? Well, don't feel bad. Nobody in first period knew either. The endocrine system is the secondary control system. So the endocrine system is your hormone system. It's glands that produce hormones, chemical signals that are sent out to the body that help to control how most all cells throughout your body function. So, like I said, we're going to look at a unit specifically dedicated to hormones, but that'll be a little bit later, and one on reproduction, which is a lot about hormones too. One of the things I really like about AP Bio is it gives you some depth of understanding of how the nervous system, your nervous system works, how your immune system works, how your hormones work, and how your reproductive system works. So regardless of whether you're going into some type of health field or anything science-based where you might actually use bio in college, I think your understanding of these topics on your body is super important for you. I think it's important you will find yourselves where you go to doctors with your mother, or your dad, or your grandparents, and you may be the only one in the room that's knowledgeable of the topics and able to really understand what's going on, and have to make important decisions for you and those individuals that you're with. So if you understand, what the doctors are talking about, you'll be in a lot better position to make good decisions for you guys. It's really hard because I've been to doctors who you couldn't understand half of what they were saying because they were talking over your head. And then some are very, very good about communicating things in a very, simplified manner. But we're going to get into some details, and hopefully by the end of this semester, you guys will have a good understanding of how some of your major body systems work, how they fight disease, and that will help you in the long run, okay? So, important concepts. Chemical molecules have distinct shapes, densities, based on the number of each subatomic molecule. So they're all unique based on whatever molecule it is, the different chemicals that are sent throughout the body. Cell membranes interact with the surrounding environment. So, and then extracellular matrix is involved in communication. We talked about earlier in the year, on the outside of every cell, there is something that acts like identification markers for the cell. What are those? Glycoproteins. So glycoproteins, there's proteins usually embedded in the cell membrane, and there's sugars that stick up. And those sugars act like identification markers. So when one cell comes in contact with another cell, then it's like, hey, I'm this type of cell, I'm okay. Now, like if Walker, something happened to you and you had to give, and Nathan over here needed a heart, and so something happened to you and your parents decided to give your heart to Nathan over here. Just because you stick your heart that's about the same size, about the same function in Nathan, does not mean that it will work. Why? What? Okay, so unless Walker and Nathan are really close match for their cell types, their tissue types, these markers they have on the outside, then Nathan's body might be like, oh, those are foreign cells. Not really, cells don't have a brain. They're not really thinking about what's going on. And so they may be like, oh, those are foreign cells. We need to attack and kill them and get rid of them. And then you die, Nathan, sorry. Or there's a lot of research going into using like pig organs for people, because pig organs have very similar size and functionality of people organs. And so it'd be very easy, like if I had a heart condition, to take a pig organ, put it in my heart, and let it get to pumping and do the same work. The problem would be, like, my body would be like, oh, that's a pig cell. That's not a, well, I don't know I'd recognize a pig, but they'd be like, oh, that's not a part of our body. We need to kill that tissue. So when we get to genetics, we'll talk about like work they're using or working on to modify the outside of cells so that they are not identified as foreign. Hopefully in the future, when people need organs and transplants, it'll be much easier to do, and hopefully much easier to get organs if they're able to use those from different organisms. I mean, pigs, I like pigs and pork and stuff, but usually the organs aren't even used in those animals. So can you imagine if you could use those to supply the needs for people who needed hearts and lungs and all kind of stuff? All right, so anyway, all that goes back to identification on the cell. Cells know what other cells look like. Just like if you give blood to somebody else, we'll do blood typing later on, and their blood doesn't match up with you, then you're going to die. Okay? If you have a blood that is mismatched, basically your body will attack it, it'll clot up, and you're not going to make it. Okay? All right, cell-to-cell communication. Essential for multicellular organisms, communication is accomplished by chemical means or touch. Even in the touch aspect, there's still an exchange of some type of molecule taking place. And when we get to the immune system, this happens quite often where like one cell's like, hey, here's part of the virus that's infecting the body. Here's what it looks like. You go fight it, because maybe another cell has the ability to fight it in a different way. And so they're exchanging that molecule as a way of identifying something that's not supposed to be there. All right, types of signaling that can occur between cells and organisms. On page 212 at the bottom, you can see there are, between animals, there's kind of these where cells attach, they can exchange molecules because they're the way they're connected together. And then plant cells, the same thing. They have these basically openings between cell walls where two cell walls are next to one another, called plasmodesmata, and that's where exchange of materials or signals can take place. Now, I know you don't think about this most of the time, but plant cells, they have their own hormones just like we do, so they're able to communicate systemically, so they're able to put out signals that are sent to other parts of a plant that signal it if something's going on, just like the same, similar to what happens in our body. Okay? All right, at the top of 213, we've got some different types of signaling. Sarah, tell us about direct.
Involves physical contact between cells or organisms. Could also involve passage from plant cell to another plant cell through the
Desmata.
holes in the cell wall and adjacent cells.
Yeah, it should be desmata. It says demata. So, direct contact between cells, that's one means of contact. Okay, one means of signaling or communication that's taking place. Part B, localized. Read down for us, Mason.
Growth factors that are released into localized areas, usually for normal growth or repair. Another example is at the synapses of neurons, not direct contact because of the synaptic clip. Another example, a teacher speaking to a class of students.
Okay, local means close by. So if you look at the top of 213 here, they give you paracrine signaling. Para means yes, around. Good. So this means nearby. So these are chemical signals from one cell to cells nearby. I'll give you an example. When one cell gets infected by a virus, a lot of times what will happen is they'll send out signals to other cells around them like, hey, there's a virus here. And then the other cells will start producing antiviral compounds to fight off viruses. So they're able to communicate with those cells around them to help prepare for like an ensuing infections that's going to take place. The other example would be synaptic signaling. So a synapse, so your neurons in your body carry electrical signals throughout your body and help stuff happen. They help you move and think and do everything, right? Neurons never touch one another. Okay, so if you get stepped on your toe or you hit something on it, that signal is going through a number of neurons from your toe all the way up to your brain. All the neurons in those steps, they're never touching one another. There's a gap between each one of them. And so in order for a signal to be sent from one neuron to the next, you have to have a chemical signal sent across that. Now this is really kind of, we'll get in depth with this, how this actually works in the nervous system. But what's going on is it has to have that chemical signal in order to send that signal, continue to send it along the neuron, okay? So those are both of examples of local chemical signals taking place. Long distance. Read that one for us, Tay.
Hormones. They are released in one part of the body which travels to another part of the body. Pheromones. Chemical extractants released in the environment.
Okay, pheromones y'all probably heard of for like animals, like they'll release chemical signals in the air around them to attract mates. Sometimes they'll spray bushes with their chemical scents. So that's more of a long distance communication when other things come through. Hormones are long distance in the sense of, like, you have hormones released from glands in your brain, and those are sent throughout your bloodstream all over your body to communicate with different cells throughout your body. Sometimes your brain sends signals to glands in your, like thyroid for instance, and then those thyroid will create signals or send out hormones that go to the rest of the body.
Hey, what's up, bud? Wait,
So-
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, what's it called? Pheromones?
Mm-hmm.
So is that like a stink bug when it like sprays you?
I don't know if we'd call that's more of like a chemical deterrent, I would think. I don't know that I'd call it a signal. I mean, it is signaling you to get away. I don't know that you technically refer to that as a pheromone, though. Another example would be like ants. They lay down chemical trails. So, like when one ant goes out and they send all these search parties out to find food, they will, on their way back, they'll lay down little chemical signals. And so, as the ants are walking along, they're using those chemical signals to find their way to the food. And that's why you always see them walking in like a certain line. It's because they're following that chemical signal. Okay? So anyway, hormones. Any questions about that? Usually those are transmitted through the bloodstream, long distance to... Now, in your body, there's over, depends on where you look, some say over 200 different types of cells. Each type of cell has different receptors on the outside of those cells. And so you have hormone chemical signals that are sent throughout the body, but they're only going to work on cells that have those type of receptors. So even though they're sent out everywhere, it's only going to work for certain types of cells that are going to be able to receive that signal. Okay? All right, so I'm going to get into signal transduction on Monday. You guys got about 15 minutes to work on your lab, the math, the questions. There is a graph you got to do. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Be good.